Now we're going to get into a news review segment to have a deep conversation on some of the stories, some of the selected stories that we've been reading earlier in the morning. Now, I've been joined by my guests, but before I introduce them to you, just want to remind you that the show is interactive. We do like to hear from you throughout the show, so use the hashtag Breakfast Daily for us to hear what you're thinking. If you're watching on our social media streams, you can also use the WhatsApp line 0204 447 033 0204 447 033 as our WhatsApp number, and to interact with us. All right. Now, my guest this morning, I have with me the Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asari. He's here with us, and also Duncan Amwa, the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. It's good to have you here. Duncan, it's been a while.
Well, we are around. If you're able to buy fuel these days, you drive. Me, I'm unable to buy, so that's why you haven't seen me.
But wait, you are the Executive Secretary of the Chamber, so how are you struggling to buy?
Because we can't buy. That's why we are agitating. We say that the prices
Kofi,
are
I don't know
too
what to
high.
say.
No. We can't buy. You would expect that prices would have gone to about maybe 9, 10, but it's still 12. We can't buy.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's get into the conversations we have for today. Now, the first one we want to tackle, it comes from the Daily Graphic. Actually, two stories here. There's the BOG adds 7.7 tons of gold to reserves. We also have the big one we want to tackle initially is the nation needs emergency energy plan. This is coming from the World Bank. Let me quickly just read a snippet of that. The introduction here says, the World Bank has advised the government to implement an urgent emergency energy action plan to address challenges in the country's energy sector. The World Bank Managing Director in charge of operations, Annie Bird, who made the call, said the country's problems in the energy sector were very serious and will get worse with debilitating effects on economic growth if not addressed. Now, since you play in the energy sector already, let me start with you. Your thoughts on this. There's been some sort, and I don't know if, Kofi, you've experienced this as well, but there's been some sort of a quiet doomsday type situation that has been happening, at least in my area where I live in North Kaneshie. The power has been going out at least maybe for the last, let's say, month. I've had at least 6 or 7 outages in the last month or so. I don't know if it is related, but I suspect it might be.
You see, I would have expected that the World Bank person would be specific. Energy deals with power, petroleum. Petroleum, we seem not to have much of an issue there.
Okay.
What you're dealing with is power. Power, you are dealing with the generating capacity,
yes,
and the financing of the sector.
Okay.
At present, you would find politicians discuss, excess capacity. We have more than enough. And so when, as a Ghanaian, as a journalist, you are told we have 5,000 megawatts capacity. Our optimum desire or need at peak periods is around 3,600, meaning that at all times you have a reserve margin of 1,400, right?
Yeah.
So when you get home and power is off, and it's not due to a technical challenge, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a transformer blown or something, but it's because of a certain problem. You begin to ask questions like we did a month ago. I pay everything I need to pay for power. I pay everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you hear the IPP say, oh, you owe us 1.7 billion. And you end up wondering, is it that Ghanaians are not paying for what they produce? Is it that we are paying the money that doesn't get to them, right? I always take Ghana back to 2 things. The ECG, or the power sector, is fraught with challenges. One of them being generation, transmission, and collection.
Yeah.
So ECG had to deal with those issues.
Okay.
Now, a report suggested that ECG needed a certain capital injection to become more efficient so that the losses, transmission losses that we record around 30%, we could do something about it. The American government came in through MCA to finance that arrangement in order that the power sector doesn't continue to be a drain on the Ghanaian economy. You recall, we ended up packaging ECG to a private-led initiative called PDS. Then, because of chronism, right, that whole PDS thing was not a bad arrangement. It was very good. That ECG, you know, anytime government goes into the business of doing business, there's a problem. So let the private sector handle ECG so that they put in mechanisms that will forestall the unnecessary transmission losses, revenues that end up in private pockets, which ECG badly desires or need, whatever technical challenges that exist from your infrastructure, the pylons, whatever you need to, set out there. So MCA had come in, package ECG to PDS, and ask for an insurance guarantee or a bank guarantee. What that means is that if they operated ECG to a point and decided to do otherwise, they've given you a certain guarantee, you know, that you can fall back on. We decided to, play games with that thing. MCA said, look, if you don't do the right things, we'll revoke our $500 million support that we're going to inject into ECG. The Ghanaian official dared them and said they can take their money and we will find the money to invest. So till date, it looks as though we've not been able to invest towards getting ECG to a more efficient point. So although the generating capacity exceeds national demand, you are still unable to get light because anytime Ghana gas goes off for 1 hour, your power has to go off for 24 hours. There's a challenge that we need to address, right?
So you, in your opinion, the challenge is finance?
It's technical and finance. But finance will solve the technical. So MCA said we were putting in 500 million USD to fix your system that is bleeding. We went to do our own corrupt things. They withdrew their funding. We dared them and said we'll find the money to invest. Up to now, we've not found the money. Then, a few weeks ago, you hear the ECG managing director admit that they have challenges, which for me is about 40% of the problem being fixed. When a human being admits I have a challenge, I don't have a problem, probably with drinking. That's 40% done already. The 60 is up to taking steps to remedy them. There's a report we cited with ASEP that says ECG went out to collect about 3.5 billion in the recent mass disconnection exercise they engaged upon. Of that 3.5 billion, only 1.1 billion was accounted for. Yes, I'll share the report with you. So there's clearly a challenge, technical and finance, as to whether the money that Kofi pays, I pay, Kweku, you pay. As to whether it really gets to the people who would have to be paid. Or we end up doing other things with them, I don't know. But maybe an audit at some later date would determine. But if that sector was as good as the German system is, right? They have a couple of plants, a couple of nuclear reactors. They are sometimes able to give power freely to their people. There are times that they give you power without tariff, right? Because they have a lot.
Because it's managed very well.
It's managed very well, it's efficient. They will not record, a dollar loss. They will rather make profit, net gain. Unfortunately, we have a system that is only compounding, challenges. So you wake up, IPPs are saying you owe them 1.7 billion. And you wonder whether the power they've generated for half the year, at the time we were in June, has never been paid for. And truly, it doesn't look like we are paying them. Because it started from 300, then it rose to 400, 500, 600, 1.7. I'm sure it's getting to 2 billion now. Whatever we do with the collections, whatever challenges that we create with the power sector, the World Bank is warning us ahead of time that you may need to fix the leakage, the bleeding in there. If you don't, the country will have to find the money elsewhere. 1.7 already.
Yeah. Kofi, do we need the World Bank to tell us what we should already know?
I think we already know this. Perhaps do we need the bank to tell us what we should do? In terms of knowledge, we already have knowledge of the energy sector challenges. Everyone who is a keen observer within the economic space knows that our current precarious economic condition is first of all occasioned by the energy sector losses. You know, in a country where you are only able to invoice for 70% of electricity that you are selling, and out of that only 50% is recovered in terms of cost. It means that more or less citizens' taxes are being used to pay for electricity bills of people who are using it for free. And if you look at the implications, it has implications both for economic development and social development. The Ministry of Finance's own 2023 budget, if you look at the projections between now and 2026, the next 4 years, government intends to spend twice the amount it intends to spend on infrastructure, both social and economic infrastructure, on energy sector recoveries. So government's projection is that it's going to spend about 46 billion on education infrastructure, health infrastructure, agric, and roads over the next 4 years.
Together?
Yes. But over the same period, the government intends to spend 96 billion
on the energy sector.
On energy sector losses alone. So the implication is that our taxes that should have been used to construct roads, enhance sanitation, provide schools and hospitals and make life convenient for our people, and provide infrastructure for their businesses to grow, are now being used to pay for people who are not paying for the energy they are using. So no one needed to tell us that that is it. And until we fix that, because it's a significant drain. This year, for instance, government is spending about 24 billion on energy sector losses. That's equivalent to how much government is spending on education. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So you are doing about 12% of your total annual budget on energy sector recovery. So we know the problem and we know what we have to do. But again,
what do we have to do actually?
What we have to do is that, one, you have to price your energy economically. Okay. So our pricing wasn't making sense. At the point we threw away the automatic adjustment, whatever, and then because of political reasons, we delayed in increasing tariffs accordingly. COVID was used as an excuse for too long. Okay, and so it also helped in accumulating the debt. Now we have a huge debt to pay. I'm told that LP debt is now around 2 billion because every month it's increasing. It's not static. So we've come to a point where we have no option than to go back to the automatic adjustment mechanisms of the PURC and ensure that when we have to pay more, we pay more. Because if we are populist and pretend we can ask the citizens to pay less, customers to pay less, when indeed paying less would cause greater problems in the future. It won't inure to anyone's benefit. And these are all performance criteria, critical conditions in the economic in the ECF with the IMF. So yes, the IMF is telling us that from today you are going to price your energy economically. That's why this year alone we've increased tariffs by 100%, right? Yes, and so the IMF is asking us to do what we know we should have done. Unfortunately, that is so. But I think it is the first critical step in ensuring that there's full cost recovery as much as practicable, the maximum cost recovery in the energy sector.
I just want a quick stab at this point here. I'm going to read something quickly to you. Ms. Biode said, Ghana had a huge potential to become a regional hub of energy. She said she's therefore urged the country to do the right investments to make sure that the transmission and interconnection agreements with other countries that needed electricity were pursued to the maximum. I already thought that we had agreements with other countries and we were supplying power anyway. What's this advice? How different is this from what we're doing?
You see, Kweku, let me give you a list of the biggest 5 exporters of electricity in the world. Germany is doing about 3.3 billion exports, what they export to other places.
Yeah.
France will come in 2.2, Laos 1.9, Canada, another 1.89. So get it. Whilst we are clamoring for money from the Bretton Woods, other countries find, the power sector viable enough to even do business with. Yet we sit and complain of excess capacity. We sit and complain we have too much power.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, not long ago, even during the era, I think the NDC era, 98, in the 90s, Ghana was exporting lots to Benin because at the time our penetration in country was less than 60%. So there's quite a lot that Akosombo alone could probably give. We're exporting to Benin and other places for fiscal, returns. Unfortunately, at the point that we say we have excess capacity, we have more than 1,000 megawatts reserve margin. Your neighboring countries don't have as much, right?
Yeah.
So if you had to put into the West African power pool, you probably generate some income. We'd rather sit and complain. The strategy for us, as far as the energy sector is concerned, we are getting zero for it. What we should even produce for our people, we seem not to be able to, deliver. Talk less exporting. Meanwhile, people are making revenue from exporting power. Ghana has the infrastructure to export. Your neighboring countries, Burkina, Mali, and the rest, don't have as much power. So when you have excess, I would wish that we even get more so that you could become a hub like the World Bank person is saying, where you probably even supply to Nigeria because they also have erratic power. Unfortunately, we who have the whatever benefit, are not optimizing, that space. And rather we are creating losses. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't appear to be a government priority policy. I see some incongruity between the previous government's priority policy and then the current government's, because the investments in generational capacity were made heavily during the Doomsaw era, and it appears that there's a clash of policy directions because I don't see the effort at exporting energy because all the time government is complaining we have too much and we can't pay for it and they take up.
But that doesn't even make any sense.
So that doesn't convince me that the government
have
sees
too much and you can see someone who needs. Why are you not giving to them in exchange for money that you need? I don't get it.
What I'm not too sure about is the economic viability
of doing that
in view of the complaints by government about the cost of the IPPs. The take-or-pays, And so I don't know how profitable or how economic the current take-or-pay agreements, would be.
So maybe it would end up being too expensive.
If you are selling it, to our neighbors. I'm not too sure about that, Max. It doesn't appear to be a government priority.
You see, either way you look at it, you have a resource that has economic value in your sub-region. Either you export or you don't.
And you are paying for it,
You are
right?
paying for it.
Yeah.
So it will make sense to at least
break even.
Try breaking even so that you don't
You know.
continue to complain that you are paying for excess capacity that you don't need. So there's a policy misalignment. Somebody has generated 5,000, up to a point. You could add on to that if you really wish. The Nigerian market is huge. And I can safely say that if we were that reliable, the West African states around us will be very happy to pick from us. It will just take a bit of infrastructure to probably transmit
the power there.
Which you already have with Benin, Togo, and the others.
So it's just a matter of extending
to other places and then give them whatever you have. You would have to decide your own tariffs, by the way.